Hello, my name is Randall Agert, and this is for the class, Bad Words and Taboo Terms. This is the third of 4 presentations that we're doing on how linguists approach grammar. And what I've said already is that there are at least 3 different types of grammar that we can think of. There's prescriptive grammar, mental grammar, and descriptive grammar. We've already talked about prescriptive grammar in depth. Now we're going to talk about mental grammar. When we talk about mental grammar, we always have to make a distinction between native speakers, people who speak a language as their first language. That is, that from the time that they were born, they were exposed to this language and they acquired it perfectly naturally. And it doesn't matter what language it is, whether it's, say, German or English or French or Spanish or Borshosky or Mandarin Chinese or Wolof. Whatever it is that you're exposed to from the time that you're born, that's your native language. And the reason that we're interested in this is because we acquire that language naturally, it tends to be a little bit deeper in the brain. And it means that we have these more robust intuitions. We have these really strong intuitions about our native language, about what sounds right and what doesn't sound right. And to use a really silly example, we know that the dog saw the cat is perfectly natural in English, but it would sound weird to say saw the dog the cat. And even weirder would be to say saw dog the, cat the. That's not English. And we all have these strong intuitions about that. And there are some aspects of language that are perhaps a little bit more complicated. And we'll be looking at some of those later as we go on and explore the grammar of swearing. We will see that there are some actually really strange and interesting phenomena related to swearing. Just to give you a quick example, we know that there are some words that sound really good with fucking just inserted right in the middle of them, like abso-fucking-lutely. That sounds really good. But other words like remarkable, they just don't sound as good with that fucking inside of them, like remarka-fucking-able or re-fucking-markable. You know, it's not as good as abso-fucking-lutely. So the question is, we know that mentally we have these intuitions that remarkable doesn't work as well as absolutely with fucking jammed up there inside of it. That's a mental grammar phenomenon. When we start talking about descriptive grammar, then we're going to start trying to answer questions about why one is grammatical and one is not grammatical. Now, when we talk about non-native speakers, these are typically people who learn a second language later in life. Right? Now, there are simultaneous bilinguals who have 2 native languages. My children, for example, their mother has spoken nothing but French with them from the time they were born, and I've spoken predominantly English with them, and they're raised in the United States, so they are simultaneous bilinguals. They have French and English as their native language. But most of us who are bilingual, we acquire our second language a little bit later in life, and usually we learn it in a school environment, in a classroom. Now, when we acquire a language later in life, our intuitions about that language are not reliable. It doesn't mean you don't have intuitions. I have really strong intuitions about what sounds right in French. The problem is that my intuitions are often wrong. So I might think, yeah, that's how you say this in French, and my wife, who is a native French speaker, will have to tell me, no, Randy, that doesn't sound right. That's not how we say it in French. So the intuitions that you have about your second language are generally not as reliable, whereas your intuitions about your native language are, in fact, by definition, reliable. Those are how we determine what is grammatical and what's not from a descriptive point of view. And so when we do good descriptive work, trying to model the mental grammar, we're going to restrict our attention to native speakers of the language because we want to be careful that we're getting good, reliable data. And if we brought in non-native speakers, that wouldn't be as reliable. So if we're looking at English, we'll want to choose native speakers of English. And if we were looking at Boreshowski, we would choose native speakers of Boreshowski.